it felt like being dragged into a whirlpool, but the water's so warm, and you feel so good, and you see this potential happiness deep inside the whirlpool that you don't want to get out. And even if you did, you could swim against it, and chances are you'd still get pulled down. But what happens when you end up getting pulled down is you figure out that it's not anything special at the bottom of the whirlpool. It's just nothing. There's nothing there.
How does love become addictive? How can something so wonderful become something that feels so bad? That is the universal question. How come we cross that line? Love in itself is an energy, it's an experience, it's a wonderful aspect of life. And what happens is when we begin to attach to that feeling, attach to that person in an unhealthy way, then we begin giving up parts of ourselves. Little by little, we become whatever that love object wants us to be, and we lose ourselves. In the limerence stage, people are very focused on that love object. They see everything and everyone through the lens of that love object.
You know, actually, before you mentioned this whole issue, someone had mentioned the term limerence when they were discussing this sort of weird crush that they were having on somebody. And when you mentioned it, I actually sort of looked it up a little bit. And I guess to me, limerence is it's an extreme romantic feeling that is maybe somewhere between a crush and love.
Would you say it would be an obsession? Do you think?
Yeah, actually, I kind of would.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that it's an obsession the way, maybe drugs could be an obsession. But it's an obsession to the point where when I was being affected by it, my grades would go down, and it was one of the few things that I would think about more than anything else.
People do suffer. People go through physical withdrawal. They don't realize because of the chemical rush and that love object moves away, just like you're coming off of amphetamines or cocaine, you are going to go into a crash because your drug of choice is no longer there, and that's the limerent object. I think people who are stuck in the limerent stage, I believe that is a disease, a distress in their lives, and that they need the support and help to get out of it. I do think people can overcome it.
Now, I wanted to say up front, I really rather not have my name on there. Just call me Justin.
Justin? Okay, we can do that.
This is a condition I've had most of my life.
How
I did a random Google search. It's been about 28 years.
Wow. And have these feelings always been directed towards one person?
No, not in 28 years, no. No, there have been 8 or 9.
8 or 9?
Yep. When you have a constant undercurrent of this thing, almost like, I suppose, like obsessive compulsive feel, where you have this thing that is in your mind and your heart and your soul and every level of what you are as a person is out of your control, and it attaches everything in life to this one individual. That she is the source of your happiness, and for her to reciprocate and for you to be together for real is the source of your happiness.
I had one woman who was in a relationship with someone who she later learned was in relationships with other women as well, and she had not known it. But in her mind, she would fantasize, well, I'm really the main person. And he would call and ask her to do things, and she would drop everything and do the things he wanted her to do just to keep that romance going. It can go on for years, and actually in a normal, healthy relationship, that limerence, a romantic stage, is maybe 6 months. It could be as long as 3 years, but eventually it wanes. But in what I call love addiction, in that stage, people are actually afraid to go to that next stage emotionally.
The movie ended. We chatted awkwardly. I leaned over and kissed her on the neck. I kissed her ear, her cheek, her lips. Now at this point, my mind was reeling. I was kissing this girl I'd been flirting with for so long. I was kissing someone I'd been friends with for 3 years. We kissed for some time, whether it was 10 seconds or 10 minutes, I'm not really sure. Something made me think that she didn't like what was happening. Something about wanting to watch TV. My memory blocked it out clearly. All I remember now is her mother coming downstairs and us jumping. That night, I never called her. I've often wondered what may have happened if I'd called that night. Would things have been different? The next day, I saw Amy. She was pissed. I thought she was angry because she didn't want what I did. I thought she was being a bitch. I didn't pause to consider that maybe it was because I never called. I didn't pause to consider that maybe she didn't like me back. Angelie, in the beginning of our relationship, asked me more than once if I loved Amy. Of course, my answer was no. How could I tell my girlfriend that I loved Amy, especially when I had no idea? I didn't know then, and I don't know today. My guess, with complete honesty, is that I never loved Amy, but had strong feelings for her. Over my years of being with Angelie, I've learned what it is to love someone, and what I felt for Amy, though strong, was never love.
Love addiction is based on fear. Love is love, and fear and love cannot coexist at the same time. And so when we cross that line and step into fear, fear that this person doesn't like us, fear that this person will leave, fear that we're not enough, etc., etc., there's always a fear, and we begin dwelling and adapting our life. And I want to say that part of that is because on an unconscious level, that particular limerent object is supposed to fix something inside of us that feels broken.
And it wouldn't.
It wouldn't, and it can't.
One thing that helps a lot, and it's almost that nothing really helps all that much. And especially in my case, because there is a whole other layer to this that I've been experiencing. It's spiritual in nature.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that the limerent objects, these women, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, came along. It was fated. In other words, the timing on things and the connections that I had between my life and theirs and the timing on the way things happened was in almost every case uncanny. I'm very rational, you know what I mean? I'm very almost clinical sometimes in how I analyze things.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know what I'm thinking. I go, okay, I have a very skeptical mind. I say, okay, well, am I imagining things? I mean, is this all in my head? All the time. And at that time, I thought, that I was losing it because of the way that it happened with her. That she would appear at that moment, at that time, which is completely unlikely, in connection with this other person, that had the same birthday as me. You know what I mean? Like, these connections that had meaning, which I came to find were called synchronicity. And I do understand that now, that for sure, that it's not only just a psychological condition, but it's a spiritual one too.
Do you think that maybe part of the reason you're finding these synchronicities with these people is just because you're looking for them?
No, they happen. They're so powerful and they're so amazing. They like smash you on the face. It happens so often in so many different ways that the universe or whatever it is, God, whatever it is making sure that I have absolutely no doubt that it's real. This has happened so many times, Andrew, that, again, it's 28 years, and there have been 8 of them. And I have journals that are filled with the synchronicities, filled with them.
Mm-hmm.
Where I wrote it down because it's so intense that I had to say, okay, I need to write this down so I have a record of it, that it actually happened. And it wasn't something that I'm imagining or something that my brain is concocting and cooking up. So I've had to accept that and live with that as well as something that, I want you to know that me talking to you right now and directly about this is one of the only times in my life that I've ever talked about it.
So, why are you talking to me now?
Because I think I think it's interesting that I found out about the wiki article, and I found out about your interview, and right on the same night.
Mm-hmm.
I found the wiki article, and then bam, I found you. And I said, I think I'm just meant to call him up and talk to him because I'm trying to overcome this right now. I don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want it. I don't want limerence.
You mentioned that you thought that when you're feeling limerent, what you're after is kind of a cliche. And I have a theory that the reason it's a cliche is because culture and art and society have been influenced to an incredible degree by limerent feelings and sort of ideal love. Do you think that we're conditioned to seek out this kind of two become one sort of relationship?
I totally think we've been conditioned. I totally think that our culture pushes us to want to be socially, romantically active at an age where it's very, very tricky and where most of them don't understand it. I don't know if specifically that happened to me, but I do know that I wrote sappy love poetry. Really, really bad love poetry. Love lorn again, my mind is torn again, my soul too full to mourn again. I got lust, I just must, I blew it, I cussed. Where did my heart go? Where did my will go? To put on that show for that girl I know. Valentine's Day. I guess I don't pray, but I gotta say I'm lovelorn today. I need someone, I need a woman, I need someone to hold. Just hope it's not fool's gold. Why am I doing this? Why do I need this? Why do I feel this? What pushes me to bliss? It won't work. It'll fail. She'll think I'm a jerk. I can't prevail. Gotta try. Gotta hope. Gotta follow my dreams. I can't mope. Lovelorn again. I'm torn again. I know I'm gonna mourn again. I'm lovelorn again. So there you go.
That is a bad poem.
That's a really bad poem. When I was in that limerent state, the thing I wanted most out of a love relationship was an unending passion, a fairy tale. I didn't want a life partner, somebody who I could deal with intellectually and emotionally. I wanted the fairy tale, the person who is, for some obscure reason, perfect. And now, the thing I want out of a love relationship is an expansion, a growth of my current self.
What are you afraid of?
Being rejected by her. Because I've been down the road where I've had real relationships where you got your ups and downs, and sometimes they reject you, and sometimes you reject them, and there's misunderstandings, and you get over it. With the limerent object, it's a fundamental rejection from an angel that's deeming you unworthy. So that is a knee-jerk reaction, and you want always for her to be thinking positive and feeling positive about you.
She was a good friend.
Yes.
Afterwards, after you sort of moved past your feelings of limerence, what happened to your relationship with her?
It was never the same. It was, for the next few years, the years in which I was still in the same school and whatnot, we basically ignored each other. And that's perhaps what I'm most sad about over the whole situation, is that she was a good friend at first, and it's a shame to miss out on that now that it's all over.
They need to clear out any reminders of that limerent object. They need to create new rituals. They need to avoid places they went with that limerent object. And I think most important, they need to do the psychological work to find out why they are so vulnerable to this type of experience, that they hang on, or they go from one experience to the next.
When I was about 3 or 4 years old, we had my mom's sister moved into our house with us, with her 3 daughters. And one of them was close to my own age. And her name was Sarah. Now, at that age, Sarah and I became really close. I was learning to read when I was 4 years old, and she was the one that taught me. And we were close in a way that only kids can be close. I hesitate to use the word soulmate because that carries a lot of connotations, but Steph was a soulmate, a natural soulmate in my family. You know, that meant the world to me. I adored her. And we had the kind of relationship as kids where there was no artifice. There was no sense that it would ever end, because she was teaching me something about love that I think I've just never been able to let go of. Now, along the same story, go forward 16 years, I came home one night, back when I was living with my father after my parents were divorced. I came back to my dad's house. I was staying with him at the time while I was in high school. And I came in the house, and he told me that a cab driver had picked her up, raped her, killed her, dropped her on the side of the road.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So, and we had life had gone on by that point, and we had grown apart. But when you have a family, you know, even though you grow apart, it's family. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we were still close in that way that we would, you know, we remembered what it was like when we were small and what we meant to each other. And not coincidentally, my first limerence started right after that.
This cycle of finding people and being limerent for them, and eventually losing that feeling and finding someone else and being limerent for them, how do you see that ending? Do you see it ending?
I don't know. All I have is hope. You know, all I have is just, you know, that some way or another, it's the central issue of my life. All I can do is everything I can, which to me involves writing. It involves focusing on myself and being like, okay. Part of the limerence for me is that, you know, I tend to lose some of my identity into it because I can never feel 100% in a way almost real, because if I don't have her, I'm not whole. Whatever this is inside of me, this limerence, it needs to die.
Mm-hmm.
And meeting her is the way for me to do it. And I really believe at this point that this current one might be the last one.
Once I began to talk to people about it, my parents, my therapist, a few very select people who I trusted, it got easier because it feels, you understand that you're not going it alone, and other people can help encourage you to remind you that what you're feeling, though legitimate in some ways, is something that can do more harm than good. And the more you hear that, and the more you recognize it, and the more you have people to bounce ideas off of and work logic off of, the better it gets. And it'll take time.
Mm-hmm.
It always takes time. And I can't speak for anyone but myself, but, you know, it might take a really long time. It might not take much time at all, and you might feel in a year something might come up that makes you question whether it's still all right, and whether it's still working out.
Did that happen for you?
It did, and usually when those times came, I was close enough to somebody that I could talk to them about it, and it would go away pretty quickly, as long as there's someone to talk to and work it out. Usually it was nothing. Can't imagine it happening again. I feel like my experiences so far in life sort of preclude that possibility.
Is it something that you feel regret about, that you can't imagine it happening again?
You know, since you ask, somewhat. I mean, it can be nice to feel like you've lost control in some ways. It can feel nice to feel that maybe there's something really strong emotionally inside of you. I guess overall, I don't regret it. I hope that it never happens again, and I hope that instead, well, maybe not hope that it never happens again, but I hope that instead, if it does happen, I want it to be a precursor to legitimate love.